Look closely at this piece of paper. It has no inherent value. It cannot feed you. It cannot shelter you from the rain. Yet, we trade the most valuable thing we have for it, our time. We trade hours of our lives, days of our labor, years of our dreams, all for these slips of paper. We are taught to save them, to trust them, to build our futures upon them. But what if that trust is a lie? What if the very thing we work our entire lives to accumulate is secretly designed to fade away, to melt like an ice cube on a summer sidewalk? This is not a story about economics. It is a story about a promise broken, generation after generation, by the very people who were supposed to protect it. We call it inflation. It feels like a natural force, an economic weather pattern beyond our control, like the rising of the tides or the changing of the seasons. Prices go up, and we are told it is the cost of a growing economy. But that is a carefully crafted illusion. Inflation is not a phenomenon of nature. It is a man-made event. It is a policy, a decision. It is a transfer of wealth, so subtle, so silent, that most never even see the heist. The real question is not why prices rise. The real question is, who benefits from the slow, relentless erosion of your money? And why have they gone to such great lengths to hide the mechanism from you? To understand the crime, you must first understand the weapon. And to understand the weapon, you must go back to the beginning. Before paper, before banks, money was real. It was something you could hold. It was gold, silver, copper. It had weight. It had substance. Its value was not a matter of opinion or government decree. It was a matter of physics and scarcity. An ounce of gold was an ounce of gold, whether in Rome or Persia. This was honest money. But rulers have always had a problem. Their ambitions for palaces, for armies, for empire are limitless. But honest money is limited. You cannot build an empire on a budget. So, the first cheat was born. In ancient Rome, emperors began to debase their currency. They would recall the silver coins, the denarius, melt them down, and mix in cheaper metals like copper. They would then remint more coins than they started with, each one containing less silver, and spend them into the economy. At first, no one noticed, but soon it took more and more of these diluted coins to buy a loaf of bread. This was the birth of inflation. Not as a theory, but as a deliberate act of state theft. For centuries, this was the game. Rulers would chip, shave, and dilute their coinage to fund their desires, and the people, the savers, would pay the price through the slow decay of their purchasing power. The battle between sound money and the state had begun. Then came the invention of paper. It began honestly enough. Goldsmiths, the original bankers, would store people's gold in their secure vaults. They would issue paper receipts for the gold. These receipts were easier to carry, easier to trade. Soon, the paper receipts themselves became the money. People trusted that the paper was as good as gold. This was the critical leap of faith, but it also presented a new, more powerful temptation. What if a banker issued more receipts than the gold he held in his vault? As long as everyone did not come for their gold at once, no one would ever know. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking, a system built on a promise that cannot possibly be kept if everyone calls its bluff. This small deception, practiced by goldsmiths, would soon be scaled up to a global system, managed not by local merchants, but by the most powerful governments and institutions on Earth. The stage was being set for a far grander heist. In the early 20th century, the United States was a rising power, but it was plagued by financial panics. The banking system was unstable. In 1913, after a series of secret meetings on Jekyll Island, a group of powerful bankers and politicians created a new institution. They called it the Federal Reserve. It was presented to the public as a way to stabilize the financial system, to tame the wild swings of the economy, to protect the common person. It was given a dual mandate, to maintain stable prices and maximize employment. But its true power was something else entirely. It was given the exclusive ability to create money, to control its supply, to decide its value. The nation's wealth was now centralized. The gold standard still existed, acting as a chain, a final check on this power. Every dollar printed was supposed to be backed by a fixed amount of gold in a government vault. It was a promise. A promise that the paper in your hand represented something real, something finite. This system, for all its flaws, provided a fragile anchor. It forced discipline. A government could not simply print its way to prosperity because it was limited by the amount of physical gold it possessed. That discipline was about to be tested, and it was about to fail. The 20th century was a century of war, and war is the most expensive thing humanity has ever invented. It devours resources, consumes capital, and demands funding on a scale that dwarfs any other human endeavor. And it is the ultimate test of a nation's monetary discipline. After the devastation of the First World War, Germany was crippled by reparations, impossible debts demanded by the victors. The German government, unable to raise the funds through taxes, turned to the printing press. It began printing marks, endlessly, to pay its bills. The result was not just inflation, it was hyperinflation, a monetary apocalypse. The stories from the Weimar Republic sound like fiction. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day so they could run out and spend their wages before they became worthless by evening. A wheelbarrow full of paper money was needed to buy a loaf of bread. Then it was cheaper to burn the money for heat than to use it to buy firewood. Life savings, pensions, bonds, an entire generation's wealth, accumulated through years of hard work, evaporated into nothing. The social fabric was torn apart. The chaos and despair created a vacuum, a void that was filled by political extremism. Hyperinflation did not just destroy a currency, it destroyed a society and paved the way for the horrors that followed. The world learned a lesson, or so it seemed. In 1944, as the Second World War drew to a close, the Allied nations met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. They sought to create a new global financial order, one that would prevent the kind of economic chaos that had led to war. The solution was the United States dollar. The dollar would become the world's reserve currency, the bedrock of international trade, and the dollar, in turn, would be pegged to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Any country holding dollars could, at any time, exchange them for physical gold from the vaults of the United States. It was a promise made to the entire world. The United States was now the world's banker, and its currency was, quite literally, as good as gold. For a time, the system worked. The post-war world experienced a period of unprecedented prosperity, but the old temptation returned. The 1960s brought two massive new expenses for the United States government: the Vietnam War and the vast expansion of social programs known as the Great Society. It was a policy of guns and butter. The government wanted to fund a war abroad and a welfare state at home, but it did not want to raise taxes to the levels required to pay for them. So, it began to print money. Dollars flowed out of the United States to pay for foreign wars and imports. But the amount of gold in its vaults was not increasing. Other countries, particularly France under Charles de Gaulle, grew suspicious. They saw the United States printing more dollars than it could possibly back with gold. They saw their own dollar reserves losing value. De Gaulle called it America's exorbitant privilege. The United States could buy whatever it wanted from the world simply by printing paper, while other countries had to produce actual goods and services. France began to call the bluff. It started sending ships to the United States, loaded with dollars and demanding physical gold in return, as was its right under the Bretton Woods Agreement. Other nations followed. The drain on American gold reserves became a torrent. The anchor was slipping. The promise was breaking. The world was losing faith in the dollar. The United States was facing a choice: either impose severe discipline, raise taxes, cut spending, and endure a painful recession to restore confidence in the dollar, or it could do the unthinkable. It could cut the anchor loose entirely. On the evening of August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on television. He spoke to the nation and to the world. He framed his decision as a bold move to protect the dollar from international speculators. He said it was a temporary measure, but what he announced was a seismic shift in the history of money. He declared that the United States would no longer redeem its dollars for gold. The gold window was slammed shut. In that moment, with that one announcement, every currency in the world became a fiat currency. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning "let it be so." It is money that has value simply because a government declares that it does. For the first time in human history, the entire global financial system was built on money backed by nothing but promises. The final link to anything real, anything tangible, was severed. The chain was broken. This was the true revelation. Inflation was no longer a bug in the system. It became the system's primary feature. Without the discipline of gold, there was now no theoretical limit to the amount of money a government could create. It could conjure wealth from thin air. This unlocked a powerful, hidden new tool for governments everywhere. It is the secret tax. If a government wants to spend more than it receives in taxes, it has two options. It can borrow money, which creates debt that must be repaid. Or it can raise taxes, which is politically unpopular. But now there was a third option. It can simply create new money through its central bank and spend it. When this new money enters the economy, it dilutes the value of all the existing money, just like adding copper to a silver coin. Your savings, your wages, your pension, they can all still buy things, but just a little bit less than before. It is a tax, but it is a tax that was never voted on. It is a tax that is silent, invisible, and hits the poorest and the savers the hardest. They do not send you a bill, they just devalue the money in your pocket. There is another, even more insidious effect. When new money is created, it does not spread through the economy evenly. Those who receive the new money first, the large banks, government contractors, and financial institutions, get to spend it before prices have had a chance to rise. They get the full purchasing power of the new money. By the time that money filters down to the average person, to the wage earner, prices have already been bid up. This is the Cantillon effect. It is a massive, ongoing transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top, from the last to receive the money to the first. It is the engine of wealth inequality. The system is no longer about saving and producing value. It is about getting as close as possible to the money printer. The decision made in 1971 echoes through our lives today. It is the ghost in our modern machine. Look at the past few decades. Every time there is a crisis, the solution is always the same: create more money. In 2008, the global financial system, built on decades of easy money and debt, came to the brink of collapse. The solution? Not a return to discipline, but the largest money creation experiment in history, known as quantitative easing. Central banks created trillions of dollars, euros, and yen out of thin air to bail out the very institutions that caused the crisis. They promised it was a temporary, emergency measure. But the emergency never ended. The money printer was never turned off. Then came the global pandemic of 2020, In response to economic shutdowns, governments and central banks unleashed a monetary tsunami unlike anything the world has ever seen. They created more money in a single year than in the first 2 centuries of the United States' existence. They sent checks directly to people. They propped up asset markets. They funded massive government deficits. And what was the predictable result? We are living through it right now. The price of everything. From gasoline to groceries, from housing to healthcare, has surged. We are told it is because of supply chains, or corporate greed, or foreign wars. And those things play a part. But the fundamental cause, the root of the problem, is the devaluation of our money. There is simply more money chasing the same amount of goods and services. It is not that a gallon of milk is more valuable today than it was 3 years ago. It is that the dollar you use to buy it is worth less. It is Weimar Germany in slow motion. It is ancient Rome with a digital ledger. The pattern is identical. A government with limitless ambition, a currency with no anchor, and a printing press that never stops. The scale is now global. The numbers are so large they have become meaningless abstractions. But the consequences are real. They are felt at every dinner table, at every gas pump, in every family struggling to make ends meet. We are all being taxed, silently, to pay for decisions we never made. We have been taught to see our financial lives as a game of earning and spending. Get a good job, work hard, save your money, and you will be secure. But we are playing a game where the rules are constantly being changed against us. The scoreboard is rigged. The very units we use to keep score, the dollars, the euros, the yen, are shrinking in value. We are running faster and faster on a treadmill just to stay in the same place. This is not just about economics. It is about time. Your savings are not just numbers in an account. They are stored time. They are the hours you spent away from your family. They are the projects you finished, the problems you solved, the value you created. Inflation is the theft of that time. It is a slow, methodical erasure of your past efforts. So what is the way out? The first step is to see the system for what it is, to understand that the money we are forced to use is not a stable store of value, but a tool of wealth confiscation. The secret history of inflation is the story of a broken promise. But it is also a story of human ingenuity. Throughout history, whenever official money has failed, people have always found alternatives. They have returned to the things that have enduring value. They seek out assets that cannot be created by decree, that exist outside the control of the central planners. The game is changing. The knowledge of how money truly works is spreading faster than ever before. We are living in a time of great monetary transition. The Fiat system, untethered from reality since 1971, is showing its age. Its promises are wearing thin. The future is uncertain. But one thing is clear. Trusting a system that is designed to silently steal your wealth is no longer a viable strategy. The most important lesson this secret history teaches us is that you cannot outsource responsibility for your own financial future. You must understand the nature of money, because those who control it will always be tempted to corrupt it. And in the long battle between political promises and the laws of economics, economics always wins.